We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. The conversation has presented itself. Andre Ward, Prime versus Canelo. Who would win? That's what I'm going to talk about in this very video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy, Ego. And I'm back with some more boxing. Listen, I don't know how you found my video, but somehow, in some way, you made it. Please help others arrive at the content by throwing a like on the video. It goes a long way when you guys do that. Appreciate y'all. Now, I didn't even know if I was going to make this video because it's not really my speed, but I did decide to do the video, obviously. You guys clicked on it. Appreciate you. Subscribe for the latest and greatest. Now, this is a conversation floating around social media, as you guys see on the screen. There's a fighter, an Olympian, the Yaffe dude, Gamal Yaffe. He says Canelo in his prime or prime Andre Ward, who wins? And, you know, it's another fantasy fight. And it's created an uproar. Now, me, if you follow my channel for any real length of time, there's certain things I don't particularly like to do or do often. One, I don't have a pound for pound list that I put out every quarter or every 2 weeks from 1 to 10. I can look and analyze someone's pound for pound list and determine if I think that list is capped and an agenda-based list, but I don't really like doing that because pound for pound lists, they're all subjective. Some people say to put heavyweights on, some people say don't put heavyweights on, and you know, different people have their own opinions. I didn't know if I was gonna make this video, but then Shakur Stevenson chimed in and I seen the response that he got, so I'm like, oh yeah, we gotta make this video, and here we are. So to me, I think I don't like to do, another thing I don't like to do on top of the pound for pound list is a bunch of fantasy fights. David Tua versus Mike Tyson. You know, it's cool conversation if you camping over a fireplace or something like that. Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson. You know, I'm the best ever. There's nobody that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is pregnant, but I'm just ferocious. I want his heart. I want to eat his kid. Praise be Allah. Right? You know, it's cool conversation, but in the world of social media, it just gets blown out of proportion. So to me, it's pretty boring. That's why I didn't know if I was gonna make this video. It gets real boring because Canelo, he's doing his thing. He beat Caleb Plant, became undisputed. Congrats. Andre Ward, he did his thing. He was undefeated, something Canelo can never do because he lost to Floyd Mayweather. So unblemished record, Super 6 tournament. He fought the best, moved up to 175. And it's just a fight that we likely won't see a real answer for. So it just becomes a segue to open up a bunch of floodgates. And a lot of people, in the words of Roger Mayweather, most don't know ish about boxing. They sure enough don't. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people chiming in and saying their piece. This is not, for what it's worth, even though I don't really do too much of the fantasy fights, I think Andre Ward would beat Canelo's ass prime versus prime. That's my honest opinion. But ESPN, they posted this and said, now this is tough. This is not even a tough fight to me. You look at Canelo, his path at 168, in 11 months he did it. He became undisputed. Congrats, kudos to him. He stopped 2 of the 3 champions he fought. So that's a great run. You know, that's a great run. But at the same time, we have to address the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is he did not have to see a bunch of diversity in order to get and realize those dreams. Like, you know, it was real political, if you will. For example, Billy Joe Saunders' best wins, and you can try, if you think you know boxing, you could try to prove me wrong in the comment section, but I know you can't. I know these young boys can't beat me. Billy Joe Saunders, his best wins were at 160. Chris Eubank Jr., Andy Lee, guys like that. David Lemieux. Those are all wins at 160. Billy Joe Saunders hadn't really accomplished much of anything in the 168-pound division. Politics allowed him to move up after failing a drug test and canceling, which caused the cancellation of the Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade fight, right? And somehow, some way, he took a tune-up at like cruiserweight against an unheralded, unheard of person, and somehow, some way, that garnered him a shot at a title against another guy most people have not heard with no real stripes. So yeah, he was a champion, but in this weight class, he was unproven. This is the path that Canelo had to go through. And same thing with Caleb Smith. Caleb Smith's best win at the point when he was fighting Canelo was against George Groves. Badu Jack had beaten George Groves and dropped him on a Mayweather undercard years before that. And even before that, the boy Carl Froch, who Andre Ward beat in the Super 6 tournament, Carl Froch stopped George Groves twice. So that was Caleb Smith's best win. So it's like, what are we talking about? So again, Canelo, he's a great fighter, but it's not even, in my opinion, it's not even a question. I think, again, Canelo, he fought all Caucasian fighters. 2 of them were from England, and there are people out there who believe that Caleb Plant was too inexperienced and he lost, so maybe you could argue that, right? I thought Caleb Plant still had a chance. You know, Canelo proved me wrong and actually beat him. I picked Caleb Plant via majority decision, and Canelo got the stoppage. Fair play to him. But he still, like he said in the fight, you hear him in the round, he said, I'm not so bad for a guy with 21 fights, right? I'm pretty good for 21-0, right? Canelo has double the fights. He has like 50 fights. So the safe bet was to pick Canelo. I still thought Caleb Plant's style would give him problems, and it did just that. He gave Canelo problems. So you could say whatever you want. Even Eddie Reynoso in the corner was saying that. So, you know, instead of just letting Canelo be and him have his moment, people want to play these games, which open up a whole nother conversation. But let's get into Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson was asked about, or he's seen this post about who would win. And the question was, again, prime Canelo or prime Andre Ward, who would win? Shakur Stevenson says Andre Ward easy. Andre Ward easy, which is the same notion, exactly what I believe. Exactly what I believe the case. I think that would be Andre Ward, and it will be in a dominant fashion. So in saying this, Shakur Stevenson said Andre Ward easy. Shakur received a lot of flack in the comment section, right? He received a lot of flack, and some people were saying like, oh, you hate Mexican fighters and all types of stuff because he believes Andre Ward would win, right? Look, the guy says, one guy, whoever this fan is, says, we know you only root for black fighters. Yawn. So now this is what it's come to, and he says Andre Ward is mixed. And I'm glad Shakur Stevenson pointed that out, because Shakur Stevenson himself is African American, but he's also mixed with Puerto Rican. Andre Ward is black and white biracial, right? But this goes to show you, you can tell by the comments, I'm glad, because when people use comments, so first of all, you look at this comment, this guy, this fan has a picture of a Mexico flag in his username on Twitter, and he says the comment, we know you only root for black fighters. So we could see and feel the energy. And I'm glad when people do this, because it further proves what I've always told you, that race plays a part in boxing, not for me, but for a lot of these dudes who comment on in the sport of boxing. And when they make comments like this, it lets you in on the interior of how they feel. And it shows you a little bit more about the person, whoever is the one out here saying it. So because Shakur Stevenson believes that Andre Ward would defeat Canelo, then that means he only roots for black fighters, right? Which is similar to the criticism you hear on my channel. The black channels, right? I believe in my heart, I believe prime versus prime. This is why I don't like doing this, because there's no end result, there's no conclusion, right? The same guy responded, he says, my bro, I never seen you show no love for La Raza. I'm just being honest. So once again, this shows you the interior of the person leaving these comments, because In boxing, it shouldn't be about showing love to this guy or that. It should be calling a fight based on skills, ring IQ, and what you feel. There is no showing love to La Raza or showing love to this nationality or showing love to this ethnicity. It's about skills pay the bills, and that's what it should be about. So when guys like Jermell Charlo, he said race doesn't matter, skills pay the bills. This is false. Comments like this, and this is why I'm doing the video, because comments like this are proving and disproving anybody who has the notion that race and nationality and ethnicity is not a powerful mover from a lot of the boxing fans and their perceptions and opinions of boxing, because none of this stuff really has anything to do with boxing. And it goes to show you, again, the interior of the person who are making these such comments. For example, it shows you Andre Ward is biracial, but it shows you they identify him as a black man, right? Even though his dad was white, rest in peace to his father, right? They identify him as a black man. So as a result, they either don't know his genealogy or his history or his pedigree. So they just see in profile and say, oh, he black, he just light skinned, or they know it and they still identify him as a black man. So that's how the comment gets wagered. And then you see responses like this. He says to Shakur, my bro, I never seen you show no love for La Raza. But if you believe Andre Ward is the better fighter, then why would you show love to La Raza or anybody else if you truly believe that Andre Ward is too gifted to lose to Canelo Alvarez? So again, I had to make this video. I wasn't going to make it because the whole conversation is stale and it's a bunch of fantasy fights. I personally know Andre Ward, and out of respect for him, I'm going to take him at his word. He specifically said he has his faculties in check, and he retired, and he's happily retired. He's a family man. He has his sons that play sports, and Andre Ward says that he's not planning on coming out of retirement. He has a commentary gig with Top Rank and ESPN, and he said life is good, life is Gucci. He walked away from the sport, and he made the decision based on how he felt and where he wanted to go, and he's happy with that. So there's really no epic conclusion for this. So that's why I don't like doing it. And had I not seen these comments, I probably wouldn't have made the video, because it would just be a bunch of people arguing on if Canelo can beat Andre Ward or not. And it's something we likely won't see unless Andre Ward were to feel compelled to do a Sugar Ray Leonard and come out of a long hiatus and retirement. Funny enough, too, you see all these straw man arguments from Canelo fans, the Chupapi Muñeños, and Canelo fans are saying stuff to the fact of, oh, look at Kovalev got knocked out brutally by Canelo. I mean, these triangle theories don't really work, especially since Ward was the first to knock out Kovalev, right? And in that fight, Kovalev had a full camp and full time to prepare, unlike when he fought on a quick turnaround from the Anthony Yarde fight versus Canelo. There was probably rehydration clauses. Kovalev, I made a video about it way back then. He even made a post on Instagram, and he said it was fake. The Canelo fight was fake. That's what he said. So you got to take that up with him. And then we can't forget that he was stopped in between the Andre Ward double losses. He got stopped and dropped a bunch of times by Eliter Alvarez, who Joe Smith Jr. later would beat. And he got demolished by Eliter Alvarez. And then he had to fight him and box more. Then he had a tough fight with Anthony Yarde. All this stuff transpired before Canelo got to him. You know what I mean? So that's not a good argument to compare the two. That's like saying, oh, Floyd Mayweather was competitive with Carlos Baldomir or Zab Judah and Canelo knocked him out. Yeah, Canelo knocked him out when he was 40 years old. See, but again, this is a deeper conversation because a lot of y'all don't know ish about boxing. But I thought it was amazing to see Shakur Stevenson receive flack because he believes Andre Ward would beat a Canelo. And I agree with him too. I think it would be ugly. And again, Canelo's whole run, You give him some credit, but he also fought all white fighters, two of which had styles that like a European style, so to speak, from England that we knew Canelo had fared well with. So, I think Canelo's whole run is a bit overstated. He didn't have to fight the same type of diversity in styles and complexion and melanin that he would have to fight if it was undisputed at 160, because he would have had to go through Charlo. He would have had to fight Triple G probably, and he would have to fight Demetrius Andrade. That's a big contrast in all three guys' styles and techniques and attributes and things like that. So to be honest, it was an easier path. And some it's not Canelo's fault, but some divisions are like that. Some people like, Terrence Crawford, he became undisputed at 140, but truth be told, Terrence Crawford at 140, his path was not exactly the same as what Josh Taylor had to do to become undisputed at 140, because Josh Taylor had to go through Baron Chunk and Regis Prograis and Jose Ramirez, three guys that most people would probably feel are higher rated than some of the people Terrence Crawford had to face, like Ndongo. So let me know what you guys think. You also could put your opinion on Andre Ward, Canelo. I think at 168, if we're talking prime versus prime, man, Dre Ward all day, SOG. That's not even a question. I wouldn't even think twice. And it's funny to see the Canelo fans that they had no interest in making this fight until Andre Ward was retired. Like, I've never heard the conversation about Andre Ward and Canelo when he was an active fighter, like when he was and it's funny just to see that people jump bad on social media, and then now that it's a fantasy fight, now people are coming in and waging, because boxing fans are such creatures of habit and victims of the moment, victims of, there's me in the background. You see me, I've been putting in work. That's me right there. There's me right there. You see, I've been putting in work. I've been putting this work for boxing. I'm right there. So I've seen it firsthand what Andre Ward can do. And at the end of the day, people are victims of the moment, and Canelo is his time. He's doing his thing, and his wave is great. But when Andre Ward was out here winning and dominating, I didn't really see any of this energy to match Canelo with any of these people, including Andre Ward, Kovalev. It was much later. So that's the reality of it. Let me know what you guys think. But you guys see, race does matter, because Shakur Stevenson, he lends his 2 cents in, and then people say, oh, you never vote for La Raza or whatever, and you only go for black fighters, without even including the fact that Andre Ward is biracial. So at the end of the day, we know what time it is. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, is Ego signing off. And I'm out.